many people died. We've been working with the newspaper, and you will see that with some astonishing computer renditions, we've come to realize that very often the difference between living and dying. I might add that some of those who survived have been very generous with their time so that we could understand.
I was on the phone talking to one of my colleagues in another office, heard a loud roar, and I had to turn 90 degrees to look out the window to look north, and right there, coming right at me, was this large passenger jet, maybe just 2 or 3 plane lengths away from me. And I just stuck my head and prayed to God to save me, because I thought this was it.
8 floors below George Slay, Fred Eichler was standing at his window. He saw it too.
I mean, we were staring into the cockpit. We could not recognize anything. I mean, it did happen kind of quickly, but we saw the entire plane and then watched it crash into the building.
Got out of the elevator. I heard a whoosh, and I looked up, and the 3 elevators directly across from me were on fire. They just had exploded, and the doors on the elevators were ajar. I immediately decided I just have to go where I don't see flames. I ran out of the elevator into the first office I could find. It was an insurance company called Accelera. A gentleman there named Fred Eichler told me that he had actually just seen an American Airlines jet fly into the building while he was sitting having his breakfast.
Strangers thrown together in terrible circumstances. They would need each other to survive.
The hallway burst into flames outside of our door, so we were trapped in our office, and we could not get out. We believed that people knew we were up there, but I'm not quite sure if anybody really did know.
On an express elevator, Chris Young was alone, headed for the North Tower lobby.
I was in sort of a good mood, and so I started sort of just like jumping up in the elevator to see if I could get that, lighter than air feeling or whatever when the elevator's speeding down. It was just at that point that there was just a huge, massive shaking of the elevator that made it screech to a stop. And it was quickly followed by this just huge gust of wind that pushed into the elevator and sort of pushed in all this fine yellow dust into the elevator. And I mean, as rational as it was or whatever, I had been jumping in the elevator. It was like, oh my God, I've done something.
91 floors above, George Slay struggled to recover after the plane hit a few feet over his head.
And everything came down around me. My ceiling tiles all collapsed around me. The light fixtures came down. All the books on my bookshelf tumbled on top of me. So I didn't really feel the impact. I was distracted by all of this. And we got out of our office space into the hallway. There was some smoke on the floor, but we headed to the 3rd stairway. We looked up and there was debris in the stairwell above us. There was some debris in the form of sheetrock on the stairs. We just lifted that against the wall and we were able to walk down the stairs from that point. There was no one coming down when we entered into the stairwell.
And no one ever would. The 92nd floor would become the bottom of the North Tower tomb. The upper floors were sealed off. The plane's impact had collapsed all 3 escape stairwells. Elevator shafts were destroyed or had become infernos. Rescue would prove impossible. Those people trapped in the upper 19 floors would not survive. The South Tower was 125 feet from the north, and on the 105th floor, a large meeting had assembled in the offices of Aon Insurance. Joe Ditmar was at the meeting.
The lights flickered. A gentleman came into into the room and said that there had been an explosion in the first tower and that we had to leave because we were being evacuated.
Throughout the South Tower, the alarm spread and evacuation began. Most of the people had little idea of what had happened to the North Tower or how severe the damage was. People on the 105th floor began down through the stairwell, and on the 90th floor, they noticed a door open. They filed out of the stairwell.
We went out onto the 90th floor. I don't even know whose offices were there, and that's when we first had the chance to experience what was going on. Worst 30 seconds of my life. The first thing that I noticed was screaming. A man, very distinct voice of a man screaming, "Oh my God, oh my God," and a woman just shrieking. So obviously I had to look. I looked out. You could see that the first tower was engulfed in flames. There was a gaping hole in the building. And then things just coming out of the building, just falling out of the building. The furniture and the papers and the people.
Person just wandered to the side of the building, obviously choking and blind from the smoke. And since the floor had been blown away, was jagged, probably didn't realize where the end of the floor was and just fell right out of the building. And as you stand there at the window, you just watch this body drop. And your stomach and your knees drop right along with that. And then another, and then another.
That just scared the daylights out of me. I just immediately started telling people, you need to leave. Whatever it is, we'll find out when we're downstairs.
Florence Jones worked for Baseline Financial with offices on the 77th and 78th floors of the South Tower, connected by an escalator. She remembers pleading with Jill Kemble, a receptionist on the 78th floor, to leave.
I could tell she was scared. And I just kept saying, get in an elevator, get in an elevator. She wasn't going to leave until someone more superior in charge told her to leave. And she didn't do that until the chief financial officer said to her, look, if you want to leave, go ahead and leave. The last I saw of her, she went out to go wait for an elevator to go down.
If the boss stayed, the staff stayed. Today, your fate was sealed if you stayed too long. In the South Tower, workers from most floors were heading down through the 3 emergency stairwells and using the building's 99 elevators. Thousands of people went steadily out of the building. But in the North Tower, the conditions were getting steadily worse. Fred Eichler and Jonathan Judd were still trapped in offices on the 83rd floor.
I don't know if it was metal or glass, but you could see glittering things coming down, big crashes. You could hear big crashes, and everyone said, stay away from the windows. You could see tons and tons of papers flying, like a ticker tape parade. And it continued to get smokier and smokier.
My wife, my parents, and one of my daughters called, and I never told them what the real situation was. I never told them that there was an inferno right outside our door. But realistically, I really believe that was the last time I'm going to speak to them.
Somewhere near the North Tower lobby, Chris Young's elevator was still stuck. Young, alone, was desperately pushing emergency buttons.
This computer voice came on, saying that your call had been received, that someone would be there that someone would be with you shortly. And it just kept repeating that message over and over, and there was no way to make it stop. It was about 15 minutes or so, and then someone did come on to the intercom, a live person. And the first thing they said was, "Anybody in here?" I just sort of yelled out, "Yes." I asked him what had happened, but he really wouldn't give me any specifics. He just said, it's an emergency situation, and that someone would be there shortly to get me out of the elevator.
The mortal peril of those trapped in the North Tower's upper floors was becoming increasingly clear. Desperate for air, windows were broken. People clung to the side of the building 100 stories up. Workers in the South Tower looked at them from just feet away.
To see these young people doing the sign of the cross and jumping, you were like, oh my God. It's got to be awful up there for people to make that choice to want to jump and know that you're going to die. And you can't pull your eyes away as much as you'd like to, just out of sheer dignity for them. You'd like to, but it's very hard to do that. I kept saying to myself, this is not a movie. This is real. These are real human beings that are smashing. It's just, that's an awful thing to see.
Florence Jones had gone to the 78th floor elevators, but they were now packed.
And I was like, you know, we're not getting out this way. We have to go downstairs, make sure everyone is off the floor, and we gotta leave. And that's the only reason why I'm here today, is because I ran down the escalator with them to make sure everybody was off the 77th floor.
On this day, the smallest decision would be crucial. 7 floors above, on the 84th floor of the South Tower, a similar scene was playing out. Brian Clark worked for Eurobank.
One woman in particular, Susan Polio, did not know she was about to see what she saw. And as she looked up, all of a sudden she spun in horror and ran back to me, the 5 yards back from the glass I was. And Brian, she said, people are dying, she said. And I said, Susan, I know it's a terrible thing. And I put my arms around her. I said, come on, let's get you composed. And I walked her off our trading floor, down the center hallway, to the west side of the building, which is where the ladies' room is. And I said, you know, get yourself together. And it really is that walk, I think, that saved my life.
Throughout the South Tower, people were going down through the stairwells or using the elevators. And then, just before 9 a.m., there was an announcement broadcast throughout the building.
The statement was, it appears that Trade Center 2 is now safe. You can go back to your offices. And at which point, a lot of people stopped dead in the stairwell.
Actually saw people going back in the other direction, people going back to their places of work. They were, you know, hey, going back. I remember clearly saying, well, where are you going? And he said, I'm going back to work. I said, God, you're more dedicated than I could ever hope to be.
78 is a sky lobby. There's express elevators that go from 78 to 1. So me and 5 of my friends decided, you know, okay, let's walk up a couple of flights. Why walk down? It was really hot. So we walked up back to 78, figuring on catching an elevator.
The 78th floor sky lobby had a bank of 12 express elevators and 24 local elevators to the upper floors. The lobby had become packed with people, some heading out of the building, some back to their offices.
That's where I saw Mary, and she said, you know, in words that I shouldn't use here, that there was no conceivable way she was going to walk down 90 more flights of stairs or 78 more flights of stairs. She was taking the elevator. The elevators were running, come on. And just had a gut feeling. I can never really explain it 100%. Something that just told me, no, keep walking.
Whether to use the stairs or wait for an elevator, another fateful decision. 1 floor below, Florence Jones looked south from the 77th floor windows.
I could see straight across the floor, which was all glass. And I could not figure out, on a bright, sunny, cloudless day, what this black thing was that was approaching the building.
4 floors above, Stanley Primnath saw the same thing.
And for no apparent reason, I just raised my head, watching towards the harbor, the Statue of Liberty, and what I saw was a giant aircraft come in eye contact, eye level towards me. And I dove under my desk. This impact was so great that I got temporarily deaf. Couldn't hear anything. It looks like a demolition crew came in and just knocked everything flat. Steel doors were knocked off. All the walls were flattened. All the desks and every piece of furniture was damaged. All the computers were like smithereens. The ceiling caved in, and part of the 82nd floor collapsed. And I'm hiding under a steel desk, the only one that stood intact. My Bible was on top of that desk.
Stanley Primnath had survived the direct hit. The nose of the plane had come right through the windows of his floor.
And the bottom wing is hung in my office door 20 feet from where I am. And the wing starts to burn. I couldn't see the rest of the plane. And I'm saying to myself, oh Lord, this plane is gonna explode and I'm gonna die. I have to get out of here as fast as possible.
3 floors above Stanley, on the 84th floor, Brian Clark's decision to walk a colleague to the bathroom had taken him out of the plane's path. Nearly 50 people died on the east side of the floor. On the west, there was a handful of survivors. Brian Clark and Ron DeFrancesca were 2 of them.
I got knocked flying. And, you know, the false ceilings all came down, and debris and dust, and all the lights went out. And it was louder than you could imagine.
And for the next 10 seconds, I experienced terror. And the building swayed. The building just went a long way. It seemed like for 10 seconds, one way. This felt like it was going yards. And I thought we were going over. I thought we were falling to the west into the Hudson. But it stopped and didn't move and then came back to vertical.
My colleague and I, he was screaming, and I grabbed him, and I led this man into the stairwell with me. And we proceeded on our journey.
Now the people in the North Tower stared at the South Tower to see the horror that mirrored their own. Jonathan Judd was on the phone to his wife, who saw the plane hit on television.
And as I was speaking to her, she said, oh my God, look out the window. And the other plane had hit the South Tower, and all I saw was flame. My entire field of vision was flame. It was like hell. That's when I really, really got scared. And my legs started to shake like I've never felt them before, like, almost like I couldn't stand up.
We heard this massive explosion, and we thought that the floors above us were collapsing on us. At that point, we made a decision to try to get out. As we got to maybe 5, 10 feet to where we thought we were going, all the lights went out, and we could not see anything. So we decided to go back to our office, and there wasn't a word that was spoken. It was dead silent. And the only noise you heard was the ceiling tile falling all around you. Either be rescued or die. Those were the choices.
Such choices. Joe Ditmar chose not to take an elevator and walk down the stairs. Brian Clark chose to help a distressed colleague to the bathroom, away from the windows and a floor that exploded on impact. Florence Jones chose to go down a floor to 77 to organize the evacuation of her offices. All of them survived.
For me, that decision was crucial because everybody practically on that floor died on 78. And where I would have been standing, there would have been no way I could have gotten out of the way of that airplane.
The United plane had devastated the South Tower from the 78th through the 84th floors. Hundreds of people had been standing in the 78th floor sky lobby waiting for elevators. Only 10 of them are known to have survived. They were standing at the far north end of the lobby, very near the only stairwell that had not been destroyed. Mary Jost was there. So were Kelly Ryer and Donna Spira.
There was like 6 of us, and I says, is anybody going up? And my friend just turned around and said, I'm not going back up. soon as she said that, the plane hit.
As I woke up, I turned and I saw fire, and my face felt like it went on fire. And then I turned and I felt like my back was on fire, and I rolled. But I couldn't roll far because there were people around me.
And I remember walking into the elevator and then just feeling a blast like nothing I'd ever felt before, just a wave of heat. And just, I was smashed into the back wall of the elevator and just crumpled to the floor. When I regained my senses, there was an inferno in the elevator shaft that was coming into the elevator. The fire was coming in, the hot embers were flying into the elevator, and it was filling up with black smoke. I realized then what the people in Trade Center 1, the choice they were making, which was, you'll do anything but burn to death. It's the most horrifying experience that I've ever faced in my life. And I remember thinking, well, if I can stand up long enough to breathe in the hot smoke, I'll die of smoke asphyxiation, and I won't know that I'm going to burn to death trapped in this elevator.
I remember seeing my friend laying on the floor. My pocketbook had fallen on her. She wasn't conscious. None of my friends that I was with on 78 made it. I just couldn't see. It was so dark. I just couldn't see anybody. I couldn't help anybody because I was hurt.
I knew there was a stairwell, and I crawled till I was blocked by the elevator banks. And I stood up, and fortunately the door opened to touch. And the lights were on in the stairwell. So I basically yelled back that if anybody could hear me, because as far as I knew, there was nobody alive. And nothing, heard nothing back. And then I proceeded to go down.
I then, I guess, started to look around and realized that the doors hadn't closed all the way, and that maybe I could get out of the elevator. And I start pulling, but the fire is coming up from the floor, and it's singeing my arms every time I'm trying to do this. And as I open the door and I look forward, what I saw was the whole floor was on fire. The people that were in the sky lobby, most of them appeared to have been killed instantly. There were some people who seemed to be alive. Those that were alive, as we're crawling along, as I'm crawling along, you're touching each body to see if the person's alive or not alive.
And that's when I met up with Kelly. That was a miracle because there wasn't many people that made it on that floor.
The first thing I said to her was, I guess God wants us to live. Because there's no other explanation for why we were alive that I could see from what we walked through.
I just held on to Kelly for dear life. I held on to his belt buckle. And we just started going down the stairs. And there wasn't many people going down the stairs.
Kelly and Donna, who was badly wounded, were on their way down out of the smoke and the flames. Just below, Mary Jose was about to fall into the arms of a stranger, Eric Thompson, who was looking up the shattered stairwell.
All I could see was blackness behind her. The door looked like it was wedged open. The pipes were down. There was water running. The ventilation had fallen. The sheetrock was laying crumbled. There was soot on everything. I just heard someone before. I heard her before I saw her, and she's like, "Is anyone down there? Can you please come and help me? I'm hurt."
I don't think I really ever knew how badly I was hurt. At all. I didn't know I had a blow to the head. I mean, I didn't know that part of my arm was gone, you know. I didn't. I had no idea, and I guess it's part of it is your systems just take over. Adrenaline just keeps pumping, and you just go.
On this day, strangers rescued strangers. In the South Tower, on the highest floors, only 17 people are known to have made it safely out of the building. Virtually no one made it unassisted. There would be no emergency help from below.
We entered the stairs on the 84th floor, stairway A, and only went down 3 floors when we met a woman and a smaller man, but a very heavy-set woman coming up, and she was insistent, stop, stop. You can't go down. We, referring to her associate, we've just come off a floor in flames, and we've got to go higher, get above the smoke. You can't, and she just wouldn't stop talking and said, no, you got to go up. And very quickly, 15, 20 seconds into that conversation, or the debate, if you like, I was distracted. And I heard this banging on the wall and a voice yelling in the darkness on the 81st floor, help, help, I'm buried, I can't breathe, is anybody there, help? And I was able to push the drywall back and get onto the 81st floor.
Just feet away, Stanley Premnath, who survived the plane's impact under his desk, was still alive. But he was trapped behind the burning and collapsed walls of his former office.
And I started to crawl. And I'm saying, don't leave me to die. This is Stan from the loans department. Please, help me, somebody.
But I could see through this opening. I said, now you must jump. You've got to jump over this. That's the only way out.
He just grabbed me around the shoulder and the neck, and he just pulled with everything he got and yanked me through that wall. And with the impact, I just fell on top of him. And I hugged that man. I gave him the biggest kiss, and I said, you are my guardian angel.
And he gave me the biggest hug imaginable. And to break the clench, more or less, I said, I'm Brian. He said, I'm Stanley. You know, we're going to be brothers for life.
Back in the stairwell, all the other survivors had decided to go up, including Ron DiFrancesco.
Down was the fire, right? So we started climbing and, you know, looking for a way out, but all the doors seemed to be locked.
To go up or go down, Stanley and Brian had the same decision to make.
And we looked at each other, and I just instinctively went down. It was in my mind that, regardless of what that lady had said, that I needed to test what was below. I would go down, and if we were stopped by something, we were stopped, but if not, we just keep going.
66 floors below, Joe Dittmar was close to the safety of the streets.
There was a guy, a security guy, around the 15th floor, and he was singing. I don't even remember what he was singing, but he was in the middle of singing, and then he'd stop